Hey everybody, once again I'm Kenneth, and we're gonna conduct today your air brake system check. We're standing aboard one of our air brake buses, and we've been hearing you tell us that the air brake system has been giving you a little bit of difficulty. So we're going to do a short video in explaining how to do our governor cut in, cut out, our static, our applied, as well as splitting our system and finishing it up with our service brake check, as well as our emergency braking system check. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. Okay everybody, we're back, and at this time we're going to start our air brake system check. So the first thing we're going to do while sitting in that seat, we're going to reach over and we're going to apply our seat belt. First and foremost, let's think on the lines of safety. After our seat belt is applied, now first thing she's going to do is she's going to start up her bus and ensuring that her primary as well as her secondary gauges is above 100, in which I can already see that her primary and secondary gauge is above 100. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a dual air brake system. We know we have a dual air brake system. One, we have two gauges. We have our primary at the top and we have our secondary at the bottom. Now we know it's our primary at the top because it's indicated with that little yellow, that little P, as well as that little S at the bottom. Okay, so we have a dual air brake system. We have over 100 PSIs to start our test. So the first thing she's going to do is her governor cut in. That is where her governor is going to tell her air compressor to turn on and resupply her air tanks with air. So she's going to begin mashing her brake, and she's going to fan down that air, and we're trying to find out where that governor tells that air compressor to turn on it. And we would know that it has occurred. And on this vehicle, it looks like it occurred at about 100 PSI. It should take place at no less than 85 PSIs. So that would be a good test. We know that it turned on because our gauge started to move forward. Now, while watching our gauge, we're doing our cut out. And there, our gauge stopped moving, which tells us that our governor has told our air compressor to turn off, and it should occur at no less than 130 PSIs. We know that it has told it to turn off because we heard air escape from the exhaust system, as well as our gauge, our primary and secondary stop moving. So we just conducted our first two tests, our governor cut in as well as our governor cut out test. Now the next thing she's gonna do, she's just gonna simply shut her bus down. And she's just gonna read her gauges, and her primary is sitting at about 129 and her secondary is at 130. And she's going to sit for 1 minute listening for any air loss, as well as watching her gauges for any movement. And she should not lose more than 2 PSI within that 1 minute. And she's going to start that count now. Now, while she's doing this, remember, she's only checking air loss within her air tanks at this time. Okay, for the sake of time, we're going to say that that 1 minute has elapsed. And our primary is still sitting at about 129, as well as our our secondary is sitting at 130. So we had no air loss during that test. So our next test would be our applied brake test. So what she's gonna do now is she's gonna release her parking brake. She's going to apply her foot brake, her service brake. And once again, she's going to allow her gauges to stabilize, stop moving. And we can see that her primary is sitting at approximately 115. And her secondary is sitting at approximately 115. So once again, she's going to look at her gauges, listen for any air loss, and she should not lose more than 3 PSIs during this test. And she's going to start that test now. And once again, remember, during this test, she's checking for air loss within the complete air brake system. And once again, for the sake of time, we're going to say that that 1 minute has elapsed and she has not lost any air pressure. Our primary is still reading approximately 115, as well as our secondary approximately 115 pounds. So we had no air loss within our applied brake test. So she's going to now reach over, reapply her parking brake, and release her service brake. That takes care of her governor cut in, her governor cut out, as well as her static check and her applied brake check. Now she's going to move into splitting her air system. In her primary gauge, as well as at least 100 PSIs in her secondary gauge, in which she does. Now she's going to get outside and she's going to start to drain one of her systems. And let's say we're going to start draining her primary system. So we'll start doing that now. So now, prior to getting out of the vehicles, she's going to go ahead and turn her accessories on. So she's going to reach down, turn on her ignition switch to accessory, and which she just did at this time. Now she'll move to the outside and get ready to start draining her primary system. Okay, everyone, while she's draining her system, as you can see, both gauges are moving at this time. And what we're going to look for is, while we're checking that pressure protection valve, we're going to ensure that that pressure protection valve on that secondary system locks in at no less than 85 PSI. Okay, as you can see, this is going to take a while, but it's continuing to drain down. Now, once we check that secondary pressure protection valve and ensure that it locks in at no less than 85 PSI, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to check our low air warning indicator. Now we're going to check our low air warning indicator by ensuring that our low air warning buzzer as well as our warning light activates at no less than 60 psi. So we should see a light come on as well as hear an audible sound to let us know that there is a problem within our air brake system. Now, if you're noticing, our secondary has locked in at 85 psi, and our primary is continuing to drain, so it's sitting at approximately 75 psi now. So we know our pressure protection valve in our secondary system is working properly. Now we're waiting for that activation of our low air warning indicator. There we hear our low air warning indicator. We see that light that came on there. We hear the buzzer. So it did occur at approximately 65 psi, and it should occur at no less than 60 psi. So we know our low air warning indicator is working properly. Now we're going to continue to drain that air system all the way down to 0. And we'll be right back. Okay, everyone, as you can see, her primary gauge is sitting at 0. Her secondary system is still locked in at 85 psi. Now she's going to get inside the vehicle and she's going to check to ensure that she still have braking power within her secondary system. She's going to release that parking brake, and she's just going to move forward a little bit, apply her brakes, and she still have braking power. Now, on our secondary system, we still gonna have brakes in our rear because of something we call a modulation valve. Our modulation valve works when we don't have air within our primary system. Our modulation valve is gonna pull air from our spring brake chamber to allow us to have braking power in the rear. And once we release our service brake, it's going to send that air back to our spring brake chamber to release those brakes. So even though we don't have air within our primary system, we still have rear brakes because of the modulation valve. Okay, so now we'll begin to put the vehicle back in park. Reset our parking brake, and now we're going to ensure that once again we have at least 100 psi in our primary gauge as well as our secondary gauge, and we'll begin draining our secondary system this time. So we do have at least 100 in our primary and 100 in our secondary. So we'll shut down the vehicle. Go ahead and turn those accessories back on again. And now once again, we'll get out of the vehicle and start draining our secondary system. And once again, everyone, we're looking for the same thing to take place. Now we're going to check that pressure protection valve in our primary system. So our primary system should lock in at no less than 85 psi. And our secondary system should continue to drain. Now, if we didn't mention it before, we know that our primary system controls our rear brakes. Our secondary system controls our front brakes. As you can see now, our primary system gauge has stopped. So it has locked in at 85 psi, telling us that that primary protection valve is working properly. There's our low air warning indicator. It came on at 65 psi, and we see our warning light as well as we see the warning buzzer. And once again, we'll continue to let it drain on down to 0. And we'll be right back and we'll check our brakes in our primary system. Okay, everyone, once again, we can see that our secondary system gauge is at 0. Now, once again, we're going to get back inside the vehicle and we're going to find out if we still have braking power in our primary system. So she's going to start her vehicle. Go ahead and release that parking brake. Put the vehicle into drive. And she's going to once again move forward. Apply her brakes. And we still have braking power in our primary system. So, in checking our primary and our secondary pressure protection valve, we can see both those protection valves are working properly, and that test will complete our primary and secondary pressure protection valves check in what we call splitting our system. Now we're getting to our last two tests, which would be our service brake and our emergency braking system check. So she's gonna reapply her parking brake. She's gonna release her foot brake and I'll put the vehicle into park. Now she's gonna allow her primary and her secondary once again to build up to at least 100 psi. Okay, everyone, now her last two tests is her service brake system check as well as her emergency braking system check. So we do have over 100 psi in both her primary and her secondary. Now she's gonna release her parking brake, put the vehicle in drive, and she's gonna allow the vehicle to move forward, and she's just gonna reach over and activate her emergency braking system by applying her parking brake, and the vehicle should come to a smooth and complete stop, in which it did. Now, she's going to release her parking brake. Once again, allow the vehicle to move forward. Apply her service brake. Listening for any unusual noises, rubbing or grinding. And she would lastly move forward once again. Apply her service brake once again while feeling for any pulling to the left or the right out of her steering system. And ladies and gentlemen, that is her air brake system check on a dual air brake system bus. Okay everyone, I hope you enjoyed this short video we just made. But we forgot one thing to show you in the video. We showed you her getting out of the vehicle and draining her primary and secondary system. We thought it would be great for you to see what she was doing on the outside. So we'll show you very quickly right here. She's gonna pull her green cord, which is in her primary system, to drain that system. And when we spoke of her secondary system, she's going to be pulling the red cord, which is her secondary system, to drain that system, okay? Just a little bit of what we didn't show you from the outside of the bus. We hope that you enjoyed the video. We hope that you learned something from the video. And we wish you much success on your CHP test in getting through it and passing it with flying colors. My name's Kenneth once again, and it's been my pleasure to assist you in going forward. We'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.